To start this off, we actually have a question for you guys. How many of you, when you go to see a movie, stay through the end of the film credits? Show of hands.
And be honest, please.
More than I
Yeah, more than I thought.
than I thought would be, to be honest.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I actually am going to say that if you stay through the end of the credits, that's the most expensive song in the film. So please stay throughout the whole movie, all the way to the bitter end, although most of the time we have like 2 or 3 end credit songs. But the first one is usually the most important one. So please start staying for the entire credit bed, because you'll see the songs as well. And I do, that's part of what I do for our movies as well, is put those credits together.
And it'll all make sense here in a little bit why we've asked this question to kind of see it all out. But to start off, I just have a question about when you first get a project, sent to you about, hey, we need the team involved in this. What does that process look like for you? For instance, when Smile was delivered, how does that go about with that entire process?
Yeah, so the first process of a movie is to budget the movie. And music is always sort of the last thought in everybody's mind. It's usually special effects, and it could be most of the time it is a multi-million-dollar film, but the music budget is like this. So we budget out the songs that are written into the script, and then when we get into that process, and it's usually before post-production, our creative team sends out briefs, and those briefs have something about the movie, something about the scene that we need music for, and then always the budget. And then it goes from there. Then we get a lot of submissions for those scenes.
And so when you're working on, once you have the budget and you're kind of getting an idea of what music you can afford, right, for this film or television series, whatever you're working on, for that process, walk me through how the music is kind of determined or decided. Are you getting information from the directors, from the producers? How does that kind of work? And in the case with Smile, what is that, how did you come to the determination of using the song you did for the end credits?
So a very important part of a film is the score. And so typically the director will already have someone in mind. Nowadays, directors and producers already liken themselves to music supervisors. They know a lot about music, because who doesn't love music, right? So they will send us a list of songs. We'll go out for clearance, and then it's typically, if it's a creative decision, oftentimes we'll stretch the budget to cover a song, but budget is very important. If a song is way out of our budget, then we move on. And sometimes we'll work with libraries who might do something on spec. That has happened quite a bit. We've built good relationships with very talented composers that are part of these libraries. And then it all boils down to whether the director or the producer and also the studio. There are lots of people that make these decisions. It's not just, it's rarely one person that makes that decision on what song gets into a film.
Amazing, I love that. And so when it came to the process for Smile, I think we have the trailer and the end credits that we'll be showing. Whose idea was it to use that particular song for the end credit, and how did it, when it was first pitched, was everyone kind of like, oh, I don't know, that's a little odd, or was it just like everyone in the room was like, yes, this is amazing, let's move forward with this?
It was a director decision. That was such a brilliant idea. We should show the Smile trailer if we could. So you'll get an idea. How many people have seen the movie Smile? Not very many. So this is your trailer to go see the film. Okay, can we roll the... Okay.
Perfect.
What is it you like to talk about?
My patient. Hi. I know you're nervous. I just want to have a chat.
I'm seeing something no one else can see except for me. It's smiling at me.
Yesterday, a patient in your care died brutally in front of you.
I need to find an explanation for what happened.
It's smiling at me. It's smiling at me.
You're going to die! You're going to die! You're going to die! You're going to...
I found 20 cases involving 19 victims with a direct line linking them all together.
You said only 19. Why is it that everybody else who's seen it is dead and you're alive? I've seen it too.
Get her away from me!
How long between each victim's death?
None of them survived longer than a week.
Today's my 4th day.
I'm not gonna keep running.
I have to face it.
Rose.
I'm just really scared that something bad is going to happen.
Rose.
So now we'd like to play the end credits. And so you see that movie, you hear that score, it's powerful. You heard it in your gut, right? And your heart is pounding. So can we play the end credits, please?
Lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop. Boom, 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 boom. Lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop. Sweeter than candy on a stick, huckleberry, cherry, or rock. If you had a choice, be your pick, but lollipop is mine. Lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop. Boom, 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 boom. Lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop.
All day long on campus or wherever you're from, because you will be singing that. I couldn't go to sleep at night without singing that song. I had to hear it over and over and over again. But it works. It's quirky, and that's something that you would hear at the end of, at the end of a movie, and the end credits. And that was the vision of the director, and it worked. That movie stayed, I think, in the #1 slot for a couple of weeks, which is big for any studio. So,
And it just goes to show like the power of creative decision when it comes to music, choices. I think when you're going to go see a thriller or a horror like that, the last thing you think of is going to be a song like that playing at the end of the credits. But it works so well. And it has that kind of quirkiness, but also that feeling of a little of the uneasiness hearing that at the very end of seeing that movie, right? Which just, I think, hits so well.
Yeah, and that song was written, I believe, in 1958. And when you're choosing music, oftentimes it's just a little clearance note. If you're choosing any music that was written 1960 and on, you will have to pay typically union new use fees. So we didn't have to pay any new use fees on that because it was written in 1958.
Which is great, because then you have, it's everything to consider for your budget, right? And always helps with trying to stay within budget when you are working on a project like that. And to talk about, clearance fees and just what the process is like, I think a great example, and I'd love to hear more about it, is the kind of challenges, perhaps, that you had to face with doing Babylon and that whole clearance process for that and what that looked like, because that's so outside kind of a normal process, and I think what a lot of people hear if you're taking a music licensing class or have been involved in the industry at all a bit, maybe are not as familiar with certain challenges that face when trying to clear something like that for Babylon.
Yeah, Babylon was, now I'm going to ask this question, and I can already sort of guess how many people have seen it, because I think personally it may have been released not at the right time. You saw Babylon? Okay, so the beginning of it's traumatic. When you're looking at this stuff, you're like, wow, I can't believe they're putting that in the film. That's right. Yeah, so, okay, we have our one person who saw it. Okay. Oh, good, good. Yeah, I think it's a good movie to see, because this movie, Babylon, starring Brad Pitt, it basically, it is sort of an artistic vision on how silent films moved into talkies. So basically, it was already very musical anyway. So the director and the music or the composer already had their music slate, and we kind of knew that we were getting into a lot of money. We had to license a song called "Singin' in the Rain," which I think just about everyone knows. But in order to recreate the scene that was in the original movie and to license a clip from that movie, we had to not only get the publishing rights, the master recording rights, but we also had to clear grand rights because it was a musical. So that's a third cost to our music budget. And needless to say, it was the most expensive song in the film. But it actually is a good film to watch because there's a lot of stuff going on in this film. The ending is a little interesting, but I would say that the beginning is that your eyes are opening about what went on back then. But I think we can run 2 different clips of Babylon so you can see Singin' in the Rain recreated, or sort of the background scene of Singin' in the Rain, and then the actual footage that I had to clear. Got the song, but so that's an example of how we recreated something that was done many, many years ago. An interesting note about this film. I cleared a song called "Dirty Hands, Dirty Face," which was part of that era. And it, in the middle of when I first cleared it to when I had to confirm its use in the film, it went into the public domain in the United States. So I didn't have to pay the US fee. I had to pay the world excluding the US. So that's the first time that has ever happened, and it was really a great feeling. But it didn't help the budget. We still paid them the full boat outside of the United States. But anyway, but that was an experience. That was an expensive clearance, but it was everything for that film, because that movie really embodied the transition from talkies or silent to talkies. So it was kind of a neat clearance. That movie had so many clearances that we actually had one song that was, we already knew it was public domain in the United States. It was not public domain outside of the US. I had to clear that song in the UK, but our composer wanted to change some of the lyrics, and we were able to, and this is really kind of unheard of, but not really, I guess. Our composer was able to capture a part of that publishing, and then it sort of revived the US portion of that song. So now it's got a life back, it has new life in the United States. So that was a win for everyone, really, including the UK publisher. So now they get income from the United States. And when a movie, and I'm sure since some of you guys have done clearance classes, when a movie in the United States is theatrically released in the United States, there are no public performance royalties in the United States. However, there are a lot outside of the United States. So composers really rely on that money outside of the United States. And for budding composers who get, and I'm sure there are quite a few out here, when a film is released outside of the United States, you stand to earn income both theatrically and when it goes to a streamer or broadcast anywhere.
Yeah, and to kind of go back to, you talking about the U.S. portion, going public domain and having to realize that and excluding it. How do you, through the process of all of this, when you're dealing with a song, a project that has so many different clearances, what is that process and what would you encourage people to use or to keep organized and make sure that you are clearing something 100%, that you won't have any issues when it goes live, and what would you recommend to someone for that?
Sure. My process when someone says, okay, clear this song, and it may be an obscure song, and you can't find it, I can give you a great example, actually. I worked on Coming to America 2, and okay, so how many people, I'm sorry to keep asking, but not, how many people saw Coming to America 1? Okay, quite a few. And how many people remember the twins? My name is Peaches, right? Right? Okay. Right? Okay. So the director had to have them back. Absolutely had to. Went to the head of casting. You have to find them. Casting was like, well, we think one of them might have died. And he contacted my boss, and my boss he doesn't like the answer no. So he said, you have to find them. So it took me about a month of literally getting on Facebook, my Facebook account. It's there for me to research. Instagram, I use ASCAP, BMI, PRS, all of the societies out there. Those are the performing rights societies all over the world. Tap into them. SOCAN, tap into SOCAN. SACEM, the French PRO. Tap into all of those to research the who has the song, because there inevitably will be a writer that didn't set themselves up. And so you kind of have to go, okay, then start from the beginning. But back to the twins. So I went to Facebook, tried to connect dots, and found this one person that had nothing to do really with the twins other than maybe they went to a party. And the next morning, this is after a month of researching and everybody had sort of lost hope, I get a phone call and a message, hey, I hear you're looking for me. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I found the twins. And so we had the twins back back in the movie for 2, and it turned out beautiful. Yeah, beautifully, I should say.
Amazing. I love that. And talking about, working on a sequel or franchises, right? When it comes to the different films that you work on that are a sequel or a different franchise, how important is using and utilizing music from, the originals, or what's that process kind of look like when you're working on that and the studio or whoever it may be,
That's a great question. Okay, another poll, audience poll. You guys this is an interactive thing here. Danger Zone. What movie do you think of? Anybody, just shout it out. That's exactly right. And so when you think of that song, you automatically think of Top Gun. And there was just a slight chance that in Top Gun Maverick, we weren't going to use it. But the producers said, no way. People identify with that song. And we used the original, not the re-record or anything but the original. There was also, for Top Gun Anthem, there was a slight chance that we were going to use Voodoo Child by Jimi Hendrix. And I actually had to fly up and speak with, in Washington, I had to fly up and present the clip to Experience Hendrix, just to show them the clip, because Tom Cruise and the producers did not believe in sending links. And they were right not to do that. And that movie was our biggest one out of COVID. But people identify with, if you're in a franchise, they identify with that franchise and they identify with the music, right? And that's part of it. Mission Impossible is another one. And this is just hearsay. Mission Impossible, the first movie that we did, the head of music at that time said, hey, we're not using the Mission Impossible theme. And so this musicologist was like, oh, you've got to be kidding. And it's like, no, get rid of it. We're not doing it. So what movie studios do is they go to like some Fort Wayne, Indiana, and they test a movie. And the audience who saw that first Mission Impossible film said, where's the theme? It's a everybody identifies with that. I'm sure all of you can hum it, right? Okay, come on, belt it out. You guys are in music. Louder, come on, I can't hear you. Beautiful.
I appreciate the commitment. Thank you.
Yeah. So you all know it. And so for every single film, and the first one, so they put it back in, and every film since then has that theme, and all the marketing has the theme. Lalo Schifrin has made a boatload off of that, and he's still alive, by the way. But people identify with with their emotions, and Mission Impossible theme was something that everybody could identify with. And so it's such an important thing to keep, right? So the creative process is just basically re-recording that theme. And every single film from that franchise has a brand new Mission Impossible theme. We don't use the theme from 6 to cover 7. Go see 8. Coming to your theater sometime soon.
And to go off of, you're talking about marketing a bit as well. I think when people think about the clearance and the work that you do, at Paramount with DreamWorks, I think they probably only think about, the films and TV shows, but there's also the marketing component, right? Like all of the trailers and theatrical. And is there any difference with, working on the creative process for that and the creative briefs for those and what that kind of looks like?
Well, just to clarify, I don't work in the marketing department, but oftentimes I'm asked to help with the clearance. And that's to get it to a reasonable fee. Typically, marketing departments have more money than our actual film department, film music, because that is all of your first impression of the movie, and we want that to be the best thing that we have going out there. So you'll go, oh, I have to see that film. So oftentimes the music in the trailer is not the music in the film. Occasionally it is, but most of the time it's not. It's usually a big artist and expensive, typically, lots of money. Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, very expensive.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so, to go off of, talking about choosing the music and getting the clearance, right, and doing all of that, has there been a moment, I'm sure there's been several moments actually, but where you've been working on a project to get clearance for a particular film or a TV show, where you've come across a significant challenge of not being able to get the clearance for that, and kind of what did that process look like, and how did you all pivot to be able to still make it work, or what did that look like for you?
My favorite film that I've ever worked on, and it for many reasons, was Selma, and I think we had about $100,000 for the entire music budget. That's nothing. That's an executive's lunch. It is nothing. But people came out of the woodwork. Bob Dylan, Mavis Staples, all of them said, yeah, sure, I'll do it for that. Not a problem. Because they understood the gravity of the message of that film. Common, John Legend, they also were part of, even though they wrote the biggest song for that film, they were also part of that. And they understood the message before the money. There was one publisher that I needed to clear a song, and we went back and forth. We had to provide so much information. At one point, we had to provide the script, and we never do that. But in this case, we did. We still couldn't afford the song. But there's a scene where the group of protesters they're walking to the White House, and they're all in arms, and they're singing a particular song. I'm not going to tell you, because your homework tonight is to go watch that movie, figure out what song they're singing. They decided that silence was better, and it was. It worked. We didn't actually need to clear that song, and it saved us $100,000. So, but it worked. That movie is an amazing movie, and if you have not seen it, you need to see it, because that, in all the years at Paramount, that is my favorite movie, because it had so much passion from every single person that touched it. So that you definitely need to see. But your homework is to figure out what song they were all singing when they're all in their arms, holding each other's arms when they're walking to Washington. And that silence sometimes is fantastic. Actually, how many of you, again, another audience poll here, how many of you have watched a film with the sound down completely? Ooh, a couple of you rare people. I actually challenge all of you to do that, and then turn the volume up and watch it again and see what you feel. Because it will change. Your emotions will change, because music, as much as we're sort of the stepchild of the budget, is, I think, the most important part of a film. That's just me. I'm a little biased. But anyway, so silence sometimes is powerful. And powerful for the budget, too.
No, absolutely. And I think that's such a great, way that they went about and approached that, because sometimes that can really, hinder a project, or it's, the studio or whoever is so, hung up on wanting to use that particular song. But in that case, ended up being all the more powerful, which I love. That's amazing. I think we're going to shortly switch over to Q&A, so make sure you're using the app if you have any questions to go through there and ask some questions. But I think one last question for you before we go over to the Q&A. As you've been working on these different projects and they come across, has there been any other particular time when you reach out to the publishers or the labels to get a pre-quote or to confirm, the use of it, and things have slightly changed or skewed, and you have to kind of, be flexible in that, or can you kind of walk us through that a little bit as well?
Yeah, with this industry, particularly with publishing is very fluid, and people sell catalogs all the time. Now, really big artists are selling their entire catalog to a publisher, and that publisher has to make up the money. So you may have licensed something 5 years ago for not a lot of money, and then now today you go to a big publisher and you ask for that same song. It may be doubled. So, but what you need to do, if you are making a movie, you need to make sure that however you describe how that music is being used, be honest. Don't try to get away with anything, because everybody's going to the movies. Everybody has access to a streamer. So be as honest as you can with your clearances, and that's both with how it's being used, the scene, because if it's a derogatory use and they find out, they will sue you. And those damages are pretty hefty, because then you weren't transparent. You need to be transparent in whatever you do. Never try to get away with anything, and be as accurate as you can with the timing, the use. And as I said earlier at the top of the event, end credits are very expensive. Opening credits are very expensive. And sometimes, if you're an independent film producer, obviously, if you're doing the film festivals, there's a certain rate for film festivals for a year, worldwide, perpetuity. And then if your film gets picked up, always have, this is the best advice I can give you, always have an all media, worldwide, in perpetuity option. Never let that go blank, because if your film gets picked up by Paramount or Sony or Universal, the publisher is going to see that and go, oh, great, congratulations, $100,000. So, and it can change, because you're going to want to put good music in your film, or you're going to want to score it. And if you have a friend who's a budding composer, that's a great way to expose that composer. But make sure you do a cue sheet. You have to have a cue sheet, because if it goes, again, theatrically, your composer can make money on his or her writer's share. And then if you decide to retain the publishing in your feature film, then you stand to earn a performance royalty. That's the publishing side for your film music. So it's very important to start out right first and know what negotiate with your composer, make sure that everything is signed and dated, and always make sure to have a cue sheet. There's so many times I see, people starting out and they don't even know what a cue sheet is. I'm sure all of you guys do, but a cue sheet is a paycheck. It's a legal document, and it's how people get paid. And you always want to pay your music people, always.
No, absolutely. I think it's a great piece of advice. Please make sure to do that. And I think, the last question I'll ask you before we hop over to Q&A, for the students who are here, and to ask questions, interactive, how many people here in the audience right now are students? Can you, amazing, wow. So my question for you, and if you can elaborate on it a bit, for students here who are wanting to, get into this industry, can you talk a little bit about the importance and power of connections, networking, and what that can do.
Well, that's how we met. Rachel was a student. I think we were a student, or you had just graduated.
Yeah, I just graduated. By the way, we are both Bobcats, so go you.
Cat. My grades weren't so great, but but I worked hard after. So I did get a pilot's license here, by the way. So that was pretty. That's my. And jumped out of a plane. Anyway, so the power of connections, very important. If you know someone who is in a public, in any capacity in entertainment, reach out to them. I think it's very important to do that, even if it's just to introduce yourself. If you have music, I think most of us, I know I do, when someone sends a link to their music, I end up spreading that around my department. Because I think that's, you never know who the next big person's going to be. And just like you would treat anybody next to you, I think everyone, and no matter how busy you are, you need to at least acknowledge that they're sending you some communication. I think a lot of people in the industry actually do. So, but the power of an internship is also a great way to learn what you want to do and what you don't want to do. It's a great way to learn how the industry does work, because there are great sides of the industry and there are pretty hard parts of the industry. But it's a great, it's like the best class you can take and get paid. Or I think I was told you either get credit or you get paid. I know Paramount has a paid internship and they do tons of stuff. So we always have 2 interns in our department.
And to go off of that, don't be afraid to reach out to people. I reached out to Mary Jo on a whim. I was taking a trip to LA and back in 2018, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna be here for 2 weeks. Let me just reach out to OU alum. So I used LinkedIn, I searched, and I looked for people who graduated from OU. And I just happened to reach out to her and was like, hey, I'm in LA. I'm really interested in getting more involved, in clearance and music licensing. I'd love to meet up for coffee. And she was like, great, I'm here. Come to the lot. Let me give you a tour. Let's connect. And now here we are.
Yep,
so
here we are.
Do not be afraid to reach out. It literally, if you don't hear back or you hear no, that's fine. Just move on to the next. But you never know what's going to happen if you don't reach out. That's my biggest piece of advice.
It's great advice. And you might be the one with the next best or biggest idea. So I think you need to be vocal and you need to be assertive. And you are your best microphone. So I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So we're going to jump over to Q&A. So the first question we have is from Jeremy Peters, and he says, how can students take advantage of the Guild of Music Supervisors to learn more and take their first steps into the film music industry? So I am here with the Guild of Music Supervisors, and I'd love to kind of talk about that a little bit. So for those, actually, can I show, raise some hands of, has anybody, do they know what the Guild of Music Supervisors is? Have you heard it before? If so, can you raise your hand? Okay, a few, good. So, Guild of Music Supervisors, we are a nonprofit organization that has, as the name suggests, music supervisors, but also more than just that, anybody who has adjacent, works in adjacent fields and music, film, all of that, right? And it's a community and a way for everyone to connect. We have tons of different resources when it comes to, Clearance 101. We had something just a few months ago where it was a virtual event. Anybody could come who was part of the guild, whether that be a friend of the guild or a GMS. We have different memberships. And that was a music clearance kind of Q&A session talking about something similar to this, really. And then there also have a whole source of other people who are also in the community who you're able to reach out to, and it's just a great way to connect with other people that you might not be able to connect with. And there's internships that are talked about on GMS as well once you become a member. And I think it's just a really great way to be able to connect with other people that you might not necessarily be able to. And educational information, and we really try and support those who are members and get more people involved. I know that's pretty big out on the West Coast, but we're trying to incorporate more of the East Coast and Midwest. So if you have any questions, I have a little booth over there, so please come by and see me later. I'll be there and I can talk more about that if you have any questions about it. We don't have any other questions here on the Q&A, so, which is, if you have questions, please feel free to submit them through this, but because we do have a few more minutes.
You raise your hand, just raise your hand, or shout it out, or way in the back there with the hat. Look, if you have connections, use them. It's an important asset to any person in this industry. Use your connections, but use them wisely. If you're asking for a big song and you don't have any money, send out a brief for more choice. Another choice, because oftentimes those big artists still don't license for independent films. So, and if you have a question, just stand up, and if you don't mind, yes, go ahead. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you. It's blonde hair, white. Yeah.
So, if you're working on a film and you get the creative brief, you're going through a song, and then you're like, this doesn't, in my opinion, work at all. Do you have any creative liberty to say that, or do you just soldier on with it?
No, if someone sends a brief, and it's not working, and we have a relationship with that company, we'll say, this isn't working. Can you send us another brief? And oftentimes, we have companies that will curate a song for us, and then the way the industry works, we'll say, okay, this is a work for hire. We'll get the publishing share, you get the writer's share. And oftentimes with those kind of situations, people are more than happy to work with you. Sometimes they're not, but then they lower their fee. There's always a give and take. But we just don't toss it out. We tell them why. And it could be just as simple as a producer says, eh. And sometimes a producer wants a song so badly. They want a song, they'll do everything. They'll write a letter, and I have to send that letter. My boss will call, and they talk with the top of the food chain, and the publisher still says no. And it could be for a multitude of reasons. It could be that the song might be in litigation, and they didn't want to say that up front. It's not always a thing you want to broadcast, but it could be that, right? So it works both ways. But don't just give up on something, and be very honest with your person, because I think that company will appreciate, because you sent them the brief. They just need to work harder to get it to what you want it to be. Yes, right next.
At what point do you decide to throw the towel in when you're having difficulty hearing a song?
It's rare. We don't really try. And excuse my, I negotiate the shit out of stuff. You have to. And in today's society, sometimes a vendor will say, no, that's it. That's our, because they have a staff to they have a staff to pay, and then we get it. But we have to ask. We have to ask, and sometimes we just have to pay that. But if there are some situations, and I'm saying that we don't give up. Sometimes we don't throw in the towel, we just get a new towel, right? You just get a new towel that's actually a better one, maybe, works well. But you share that with the director, the producer, whoever is making the final music choice, you share that information. And that's what I mean by being transparent. You have to also be transparent on the side of your company, because at the end of the day, you are protecting your company and making those choices, but trying to help other companies make money too. And it's a creative choice, but it also boils down to money and budget. So that's a good question.
Yeah, and I don't think we have time for any more questions because it's the end of our panel, but we'll be around, so, if you... Okay, one more.
Who's wearing my shirt? Okay.
I wanted to know, working in clearances, are you tied to living in LA, Nashville, or New York, or is it...
You can do clearance anywhere.
What's that?
You can do clearance anywhere. Anywhere. Yeah. Clearance is mainly online. You are working, and you're working on your computer, you're picking up the phone. By the way, never be afraid to pick up the phone, because it's such a great tool, and because we have the computer, we rely on it, we rely on the back and forth, and I know things need to be documented, but this thing is so powerful. When I hear somebody on the other end, I can ask them how their day is going. And you can't really, you can do that online, but everybody says, hey, how are you? And you just get right to the business. But if I ask you, hey, how are you on the phone, you're going to say, I had a great day, or eh. But pick up the phone.
And to that point, with picking up the phone and having a conversation like that, sometimes you can learn more information because sometimes they don't want to say something to have it documented, right? They'll give you more information and say, oh, well, the issue with this, or hey, what's going on? They can tell you over the phone, and then you just, they don't want that and writing necessarily. So they have more information to then deliver it to your client. But also, it's just powerful to be able to make those connections, because I think, and today's society, we're so used to just being online and not necessarily making some of those more personal connections. But I think with calling people and talking to them like that, I think it just makes it easier sometimes.
Yeah, I will preface, send them an email to say, hey, do you have time to chat? Or would you mind if I give you a call? I think that's really important, instead of just cold calling, because you may get them right in a meeting. They'll let you know when they can speak. And I think, is that it?
That's it, yeah, unfortunately. But we'll be around, and thank you all so much for attending, and it's been great.
Thank you.